Anyway, so Drew Bond, C3 Solutions, Chairman, CEO, and as many of you know, we launched our organization, the Conservative Coalition for Climate Solutions, to really help conservatives get into more of an offensive position. And so we've been proud to partner with ACC and groups like American Affairs, and so thank you for having us be a part of this. And what an honor it is to have Congressman Fleischmann here. Not only is he a gentleman, but also has been in Congress since 2010. So I think they call you a cardinal at this point for many reasons. And so chairman of the Energy Committee. And then I think also we've got several other committees here that you're involved with, not only from an appropriations perspective, but also many of the subcommittees related to defense, labor, and health. And then also the Science and Technology Committee. And I think chairman of 8 caucuses.
8 caucuses.
And also on the Conservative Climate Caucus and the Taiwan Caucus. We can go into many discussions about that. But Congressman Fleischmann, I just really wanted to start by asking you, you've gained a reputation as the nuclear congressman. And so I wonder might you tell us a little bit more about how that came about and what are your views on nuclear broadly?
Well, thank you, and it's a great privilege to be with you all today. I understand you've had a tremendous conference. My dear friend, Secretary Wright, I think addressed you all yesterday. I think he's doing an outstanding job, and I also see in the crowd my former colleague and dear friend, Brandon Williams, who's going to be the new head of the NNSA. Brandon, thank you so much, and I understand you are going to be a Tennessean before too long, so bless you for that as well. Talking about being a Tennessean, I grew up in New York, Philadelphia, and Chicago, and at the ripe old age of 20 was privileged to land in a law school class in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm a political science, history, lawyer, LAS type. Little did I know when I won my election to Congress in 2010 that I was going to represent a place that has really, thankfully, given me the ability to be America's nuclear congressperson, but also to gain me some form of national and international renown. That place is Oak Ridge, the birthplace of the Manhattan Project, Oak Ridge National Laboratory, Y-12 NNSA facility, and a great legacy cleanup mission. Bottom line, I've got about $10 billion a year going into that place. I love it. I love all the DOE reservations. And now in Congress, as you correctly alluded to, I chair the Energy and Water Subcommittee of Appropriations. It's what we affectionately call a cardinal. But I play offense and defense. I'm on the Science Committee as well. I went around kind of being a little bit rough on our authorizing friends who I love dearly. So now I am both an authorizer and an appropriator. So I tell people I play offense and defense. And now for nuclear. I chair 8 caucuses, and for those of you who perhaps watch the political process, we live in a very polarized world, and this is a very polarized town. But the caucus environment allows me, whether it's with the American Dominance and Energy Caucus or the Advanced Nuclear Caucus or the Nuclear Cleanup Caucus, to work with members in both sides of the aisle, and many times across the hall with our dear friends in the Senate, when we have common ground and common issues. So nuclear is near and dear to me. I believe Oak Ridge really exemplifies the excellence there, not only in older nuclear technologies, but new nuclear technologies. But I took on the role years ago of being America's nuclear member of Congress, and many, many more people have joined me. And I will say this, on both sides of the aisle. Before I take some more questions, I want to say this. Earlier this year, at my own expense, and Brandon was there, I put on a new nuclear reception. Did it at the Republican Club. As many new Democrats as Republicans showed up for that. That is so encouraging. This should not be a partisan issue. So many times an age issue. Older Democrats will not join us. Younger Democrats are joining younger and older, more senior Republicans on our path to new nuclear. We must win this. So with that, I will yield.
You actually answered one of my next questions, which is really about how have you seen things change from a nuclear perspective in your time in Congress. But I think, that also touches on a question given that, we often talk about the need for free markets. We can talk about the need for competition and getting government out of the way. You mentioned Secretary Wright. Much of what he talked about yesterday was looking for ways of getting government out of the way so that we could unleash American energy. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, how do you think about energy and the role of government and the private sector in that balancing act? Because, while I'm very much a free market person, I also recognize that we don't live in a total free market world. We're competing with competitors that don't care at all about the free markets, in fact, are anti-free markets. And so just wondering, how do you kind of square that circle from a legislative perspective, helping to ensure that wanting to accelerate things like nuclear, but knowing the markets are really going to do it, but there's some role there in the government. What does that look like?
Looks like a partnership, and I think you've hit it on the head. If you look at where our adversaries are, and our main competition obviously is China, their government controls every aspect of the process. That's very difficult to compete with. So where do I think we can beat our adversaries and even our friendly competitors who are in this space? I think with technology. I think American technology, thanks to our great national labs and great private industry, is second to none. But let's be candid. New nuclear is a more expensive technology, as is the older nuclear plants, which I'm glad to see their life being extended. I'm glad to see Vogtle online. We're going to go back and open up one in Michigan, and we're going to have, I think, the good reactor at 3 Mile Island reopened. So I'm for big nuclear and extending that, but new nuclear. The SMRs, the advanced reactors, the micro reactors, they're all outstanding technologies. But that first of a kind, and I'm going to be specific, in my great state of Tennessee, at Clinch River, I have a wonderful utility called the Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA. Does a tremendous job serving 7 states. We have chosen a Generation 3 GE Hitachi technology that the Poles like, that the Canadians are building, and the like. But that first of a kind, that first one is going to be very expensive. We know that. But we also know that the 10th one, and hopefully the 100th one, is going to be less expensive, and we can deploy these all over the country and perhaps all over the world. I want to see this great American technology actually exported so that we can regain that dominance not only here but abroad. But it's expensive. So when we make that federal investment, and that's what I do with the Energy and Water Bill and Appropriations, what does that do? That tells private capital markets that we're serious about getting this done, and they can join this. We're seeing this on the fission side, and interestingly enough, we're seeing it with abundance on the fusion side as well. So, in a word, partnership.
So many other questions there. I know because you, as you said, you're sort of at every spectrum. The beginning of the, heavy research, early research from a science and technology perspective, but then all the way to funding the deployment of the first to fifth of a kind of the technologies. While you are the nuclear congressman, and clearly this is your area of expertise, I think you're also the all the above and below congressman, I think, from a funding perspective in the way you think about these. So just wonder if you touch on some of the other technologies that you see promise in. I mean, for instance, one of the often overlooked technologies is not so much even a technology, but a resource and a technology marriage called hydropower.
Yes.
Right. And so I've heard some interesting statistics about the ability for us to really leverage up our existing hydropower. You know some of those statistics, but I'm just wondering from your perspective, not just hydropower, but whether it be solar or wind, geothermal, how do you think about this energy mix, and what do you see as most promising?
Well, thank you for that question. I'm going to turn to my own portfolio with the Tennessee Valley Authority. We've actually moved up from 42 to 47% nuclear now, which is really incredible. But as part of that portfolio, going back to its inception, hydropower now is about 12%. So we have dams such as the Norris Dam that are close to 80 plus years old, still generating electricity. And I think hydropower is important. I think it's underutilized in this country, very, very good. You've got to look at the region of the country and say what works. In my part of the world, hydro works, nuclear works. I think natural gas is critically important as a bridge. When we get there, we talk about getting nuclear online. That's going to take a while. We want to expedite that process in many ways, from the NRC to getting the funding to get the right designs. The Generation 3s are here today. We have many Generation 4s in nuclear power, whether it's TerraPower, X-Energy, Kairos in the great state of Tennessee, probably be on the grid by 2030. But the reality is we've got to look and see what works and where. Geothermal in the West is incredible. It's booming, it's being commercialized, and it makes economic sense. So I want to make sure that it makes economic sense. Why? Because as my utility friends tell me, whether it's Duke or Southern Power or my great friends at TVA, we have got to be cognizant of the fact that our ratepayers ultimately are going to be the beneficiaries or will suffer by our decisions. So the portfolio at TVA is very diverse. It's got solar in there, it's got renewables in there, but as I try to implore to my progressive friends, we cannot get there with renewables alone. We will never get there with renewables alone, and that doesn't mean we want to exclude them. And that's a very important part of this argument that I'm making. That's why with that American Dominance in Energy Caucus, which my co-chair, Mark Vesey from Texas, who's a Democrat, works with me so well. We've got to make sure that we tell people the truth. Not only the American people, we've got to tell ourselves the truth. We don't want to delude ourselves in any myths, because if we take the wrong path, then we're going to suffer later. But always be cognizant of the American ratepayer. TVA has done a great job in that regard, but as we move forward, especially with new nuclear, we've got to make sure that we pick the right designs with the right fuels and in order to get it done, and with the right capital backing.
Yeah, so wondering with your Cardinal Appropriations hat on, you got a front row seat, and not just a seat, but you're actively in these negotiations around the One Big Beautiful Bill, or OB3 as it's called now. And I'm curious in the way that things have changed. I mean, along came the IRA. Republicans hated the IRA. They hated the name. They hated the process. But then they actually received a lot of the benefits, in terms of funding to their districts. Now, move to the Trump administration, we're focusing on trying to think smarter and more efficient and effective about taxpayer resources with the One Big Beautiful Bill. And early on the discussion was about, we want to pursue a scalpel approach, not a sledgehammer. And even many Democrats, I think, saw the writing on the wall and were embracing, at least the ones we were talking to, not members, were embracing this idea of a scalpel approach. But I'm wondering, what are we've seen it now pass the House. There's a lot of folks in the room that represent different industries. Everybody's kind of fighting for their version of their tax credit, their version of their, legislative priority. I'm just wondering, from your perspective, how have you seen this transpire, and where do you see it going once it reached the president's desk?
Excellent question, and I want to kind of break things out for us all. As an appropriator, I am involved and will be involved in actually writing the energy and water appropriations bill. In 2024, we did a tremendous job, put up $2.7 billion for HALU and LEU. We put up $900 million for the competition that's going on right now, largely for Generation 3 reactors. TVA is in that with their GE Hitachi, have other companies in there, Holtec, I think Oklo's in there as well. But that's going on right now. So I write the energy and water bill. The Big Beautiful Bill has largely been written by our friends in the Energy and Commerce Committee and Ways and Means. And as part of that, I had a vote. I was extremely vocal, as many of the people in this room are vocal, to preserve the tax credits. I think that was so important. Candidly, if we had not preserved those nuclear tax credits, I really believe, due to the cost of new nuclear and the like, that industry could have and would have collapsed. So what do I want to see the Senate do? Not only leave that alone, maybe expand that a little bit further. And again, one of the nice things about being what we call a cardinal or a subcommittee chair and on appropriations, as Lamar Alexander told me a long time ago, well over a decade ago, when he asked me to become an appropriator in the House, he said, "How many times do administration officials return your phone call?" And in that time, it was during the Obama administration. I said, "Senator, never," okay? I was candid, never. He said, "Become an appropriator and they will call you back that day." So that is so, so true. Cabinet officials call me anytime I call and anytime it's a two-way street, right? So Chris Wright has been incredibly good in terms of being not only conversant on this, but communicative on this. So we pass it in the House. He is desirous of certain things, as I am, in the Senate, to make sure that we can facilitate new nuclear and other forms of energy. So those tax credits are critically important.
I want to turn to international relations a bit. You're, I believe, on the Taiwan caucus. And I want to get your perspective on how you think about American energy dominance in the context of our fierce competition with China, and with a recognition that Taiwan sits very much in a vulnerable position. And companies like TSMC that make our chips, by and large, are right at the heart of that fight going forward. So I'm just wondering, like, when you go to the table and thinking about funding research, how do you think about this from an international security perspective in relation to competing with China?
It's an excellent question. And so that the folks in this room know, because of my seniority, in my 8th term, I chair Energy and Water, but I also serve on the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee. So it's not just a parochial focus on energy and water, it's defense. I also serve on Labor, Education, Health, and Human Services Appropriations. So I've got 3. I've probably got the best hand of any appropriator in Congress. What does that mean? That means when we approach a situation, we can use all of our resources and funding abilities to address that. China, and of course, I'm old enough to remember when Richard Nixon opened relations with the People's Republic of China, and where that has gone. China has gone through a tremendous transformation in just about everything. They're aggressive, they're centrally controlled, they are laser focused on Taiwan. There's no question about that. The big question is what will happen. So militarily, we've prepared for that on our part and the part of our allies, and we just hope that there is not a military aggression there, because that could have other consequences. But the reality is we've got to make sure that we reinvest in American technologies. We're seeing companies in Taiwan and in other countries come back to the United States. We need to start domestically producing more things. That's going to take some time, because I can remember for years and years and years, manufacturing would go abroad in terms of everything. And candidly, we not only lost our dominance, we lost our ability to do certain basic things that we cannot or could not manufacture in the United States. We're bringing that back as we're building nuclear reactors, particularly the newer versions, but even the older ones. We need certain vessels, we need certain things. We want to do more of that in the United States, but the reality is we have to get many of these products and things from other countries. So it's a competition, it's ongoing. America is back in a very strong way. Once again, I talk to people all over the world, whether it's in Romania, whether it's in Poland. I've talked to the Czechs. Goodness gracious, country after country. They want to do business with the United States and not with Russia or China. But what have they told me? Chairman, when I speak with the Americans, I get a lecture. When I speak with China and Russia, I get a plan. So we need to change that. So politically, we are changing that. But having said that, the China-Taiwan situation is volatile. I have full faith and confidence in the way that this administration is handling that and will continue to handle that. But the reality is we've got to make America competitive and gain that ability to manufacture these things back, and we are doing it.
So just one last question here. I know a big focus of this panel discussion, and really the following one, is about co-locating data centers and energy, and specifically either on national lab lands or military lands for that matter. You obviously have Oak Ridge National Lab in your district. You know the labs well. Secretary Wright has issued this RFI, request for information from industry about their interest in doing this. And I think in some ways really to try and get at the challenge around permitting many of these is the benefit that you've got at the labs is you've got land, you've got load, you've got grid, and you could accelerate that permitting. But I'm wondering, from your perspective, what are your thoughts? Are you supportive of this, of co-locating data centers and energy at labs? And what do you see are the major hurdles, if any?
Well, on the upside, yes. First of all, these are very secure locations, so that you've got built-in security. Secondly, in most areas, you do have abundant land. Some reservations larger than others. Oak Ridge is only about 21 square miles, but when you look at like the Savannah River Reservation, it's about 350 miles. Hanford is massive, over 900 miles. So we have a lot of available land to do this on. What are the hurdles? The hurdles, again, is getting that first-of-a-kind built, choosing that right technology. Again, I'm very thankful that TVA has chosen a GE Hitachi Generation 3 non-HALEU dependent reactor. But I'm gonna say some really good things about our friends who are in the Generation 4 technologies. Obviously, these Gen 4s require HALEU. We don't have enough HALEU in the United States, but we're working on getting that back. Great state of Tennessee just had Arano come to Tennessee, so that's a step in the right direction. We have an American company called Centrus that builds centrifuges in Oak Ridge and spins them in Ohio. And then of course, Urenco does a very good job out in New Mexico for us. But the reality is you've got to pick the right reactor. These data centers are all looking towards certain models. So X-Energy, TerraPower, these are all very viable technologies. And we're glad to see that not only utilities, but many instances like Dow in Texas has struck a deal with X-Energy. So the reality is the future is very, very bright, but we want to make sure that we get that first-of-a-kind one built as soon as possible, because our competition, and not just our foes, our friends, our foreign allies are in this space, and they're doing a very good job of it. So I think that window of opportunity, I'd give it 3 to 5 years. We need to win this competition, because if we don't, they will, and then we will be just the customer, not the manufacturer.
So that just perfectly tees up our next panel. So Congressman, thank you. Thank you for your time and your expertise.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.